The spider plant on the nurse's station had a name. His name was Gerald, and on the night Tessa Calloway's life changed forever, Gerald dropped a leaf directly into her coffee. She stared at it. The leaf floated there, perfectly calm, like it had somewhere to be, and her mug was the destination. "Really?" she said quietly. "Really, Gerald." The overnight shift at Ridgewood Medical Center in Halifax was quiet that Tuesday in February, which in a hospital is never actually a good thing. Quiet means you're waiting. Quiet means the next thing that happens will be loud. Tessa Calloway was 31 years old, a registered nurse in the cardiac care unit, and she had been working the overnight shift for 4 years. Not because she loved the hours, but because the overnight differential pay was the difference between keeping her daughter in swimming lessons or not. She had done the math on a paper napkin once, sitting in the hospital cafeteria at 2 in the morning, and the math had come out clear. Night shifts kept Poppy in the pool. Poppy was 7. She swam like she was made of water. Tessa set her coffee down, extracted Gerald's leaf with 2 fingers, and dropped it in the recycling bin beside the desk. Gerald had arrived 3 months ago when a patient's family left him behind by accident, and Tessa had watered him every shift since because nobody else would. He rewarded her by shedding leaves into her beverages at critical moments. She had come to think of this as his personality. The hallway stretched ahead of her, pale green walls, the low hum of monitors from behind closed doors, the distant squeak of someone's cart on the linoleum. Room 412 had been sleeping peacefully since 10. Room 408 needed bloods at 3. Room 415 was the new admission. A Mr. Ashworth checked in this evening after a syncope episode. Otherwise stable, otherwise unremarkable. She was reviewing his chart when the call light from 415 came on. Tessa walked down the hall without rushing. Rushing scared patients. She had learned that in her first week. She pushed open the door to room 415. The man in the bed was awake and sitting up, which was the first thing. The second thing was that he did not look like someone who had fainted in a hotel lobby earlier that evening. He looked, in fact, remarkably composed for someone wearing a hospital gown and attached to a cardiac monitor. He was somewhere in his mid-40s, dark hair going silver at the temples, and he was holding the television remote with the expression of a person who had never once in his life been confused by technology but was currently making an exception. "I can't find the volume," he said. Tessa took the remote, pressed the button on the left side, and handed it back. He looked at it. "That is not where volume buttons are. It is on that remote." A pause. "I see." She checked his monitor out of habit. Rhythm steady, rate good, oxygen fine, and made a note on his chart. "Do you need anything else, Mr. Ashworth? Water, extra blanket?" "No." He set the remote down. "Actually, yes. Can you tell me what time the attending physician does morning rounds?" "Dr. Patel starts around 7, and he, Dr. Rahul Patel, cardiology. He's been here 11 years. He has very good hands, and he will probably tell you the same things I would tell you, which is that a vasophagal syncope at your age is worth investigating but is not automatically a catastrophe." She looked up from the chart. "He'll explain it better than I just did." The man studied her for a moment. "You said at your age." "I did. How old do you think I am?" Tessa considered this. She had learned over 4 years of night shifts that patients who were alert enough to have a sense of humor were usually going to be fine. She had also learned that the ones who asked questions like this were usually trying to feel normal again, and she did not blame them for it. 44, she said. "Maybe 46. He looked genuinely surprised. 43. "I was close. You said at your age like I was 70. "I said it like you were 43, she told him, "which you are." "Good night, Mr. Ashworth." She was almost at the door when he said, "The plant." She stopped. "At the nurse's station," he said. "You were talking to it." "I could hear you from the hallway," he said, not unkindly. "Before you came in." Tessa Calloway had worked overnight shifts for 4 years. She had handled codes, family crises, a man who tried to leave the unit at 3 a.m. because he had just remembered he'd left his car running. She had kept a straight face through things that would have undone a lesser person. She kept one now. "Gerald requires encouragement," she said. The man in bed 415, Mr. Ashworth, cardiac monitoring, otherwise unremarkable, smiled. It was the kind of smile that changed a face entirely. "I'll let you get back to him," he said. She went back to the nurse's station. Gerald had dropped another leaf. "Not helping," she told him. His name, she learned over the next 3 days, was Edmund Ashworth, not Ed, not Eddie. Edmund, with the kind of quiet insistence that suggested he had been correcting this his entire life and had made peace with the fact that he would be correcting it forever. He was in Halifax for meetings, he said. Business. What kind of business, he did not say. Tessa did not ask. In 4 years of overnight shifts, she had learned that patients would tell you exactly as much as they wanted to tell you, and the information they withheld was usually not medically relevant. Edmund Ashworth's blood pressure was 118/74. His cholesterol was fine. His heart, according to Dr. Patel's assessment on Wednesday morning, was structurally normal and working exactly as it should. Classic vasovagal presentation, Dr. Patel had told him during rounds, while Tessa charted nearby. Stress, dehydration, skipped meals. Your body sent you a message. I received it, Edmund said dryly. Good. Then we'll run a 24-hour Holter, and you're likely looking at discharge by Friday. He nodded. He thanked Dr. Patel. He did not argue, which Tessa noted because patients who wore the particular kind of quiet authority that Edmund Ashworth wore usually argued with physicians on principle. On Wednesday night, she came on shift to find that he had reorganized the items on his bedside table into a very precise configuration: phone, water, book, glasses, and was reading with the focused attention of someone who read not for relaxation but for information. "Gerald?" he asked without looking up. "Still standing," she said. "He dropped a leaf into the charge nurse's tea this afternoon. We think he's expanding his territory. Smart plant. She did his vitals. Rhythm good, rate good, oxygen fine." He turned a page. "You work 4 nights a week?" he said. She paused. 3. Sometimes 4 if we're short. And your daughter, is she in school full-time? Tessa set down the blood pressure cuff carefully. "How do you know I have a daughter?" He looked up then. "You have a drawing on the inside cover of your notebook, a girl swimming, with a name." Tessa had forgotten about that drawing. Poppy had pressed it into her hands at the door on Monday evening, very seriously, the way 7-year-olds presented artwork, as though handing over something of enormous value, which it was. She had tucked it into the front of her work notebook without thinking. "Poppy," she said. "She's 7. She draws well. She does everything well," Tessa said. The words came out with more conviction than she intended, and she caught herself because she was not usually the type to volunteer personal information to patients. "She has her father's focus and my stubbornness, which is either going to be a wonderful combination or a very difficult one." Edmund looked back at his book. "Probably both," he said. She laughed before she could stop herself. It was a short laugh, surprised out of her, and the sound of it in the quiet room felt strange and good at the same time. "Probably both," she agreed. She went back to the station. Gerald stood in his pot, shedding nothing, for once just being a plant. Tessa finished her charting and thought about nothing in particular, and then thought about the fact that she was thinking about nothing in particular, which was unusual for 2 in the morning. The Thursday night shift was the one that changed things. It started normally. Tessa came on at 11, did her handover with the evening nurse, checked her patients, said hello to Gerald, poured her coffee, and was reviewing charts when the call came in. Mass casualty multi-vehicle accident on Highway 104, 15 minutes out. Cardiac involvement in at least 3 patients. Ridgewood was receiving. The unit transformed in the way that Tessa had watched it transform dozens of times. The quiet evaporating all at once, replaced by a very specific kind of noise that was controlled and purposeful, and not at all like panic, even though it felt like it from the outside. She was already moving before the charge nurse finished speaking. What happened in the next 4 hours? She coordinated intake for 2 of the 3 cardiac patients, managed a crash cart situation in Bay 2 while simultaneously directing a student nurse through her first real emergency, fielded 4 family phone calls with information that was accurate and calm, and did not promise things she could not promise, kept the unit's capacity calculations in her head while the charge nurse dealt with administration, and at one point, at around 2:30 in the morning, stood outside Bay 3 for 45 seconds, hands pressed flat on the wall, breathing deliberately, because one of the patients was the same age as her father. And that mattered. It mattered even when you did not let it show, and then she went back in. She did not leave the floor until 6:15. She was standing at the nurse's station, writing the last of her incident reports, when she became aware that Edmund Ashworth was standing in the doorway of his room watching her. He had his IV pole with him. He'd been allowed to walk the hallway since Wednesday. "You've been here all night," he said. "It's a hospital." She kept writing. "People tend to stay. There was an accident. Highway 104, multi-vehicle." She looked up briefly. "You should be in bed, Mr. Ashworth. Dr. Patel doesn't need to find you in the hallway." He didn't move. "I heard you," he said. "During the night. Not just you, all of you. But you especially." She put down her pen. "Mr. Ashworth, my sister is a nurse," he said, "in Edmonton. I've listened to her talk about her work for 20 years, and I thought I understood what it was. I didn't." A pause. "I didn't understand what it actually looks like from the inside of a floor during something like that." Tessa looked at him for a moment. "There were 14 people in those rooms tonight who are alive right now," she said. Because a lot of people did their jobs. I was one of those people. So was the paramedic team and Dr. Okafor and the student nurse who is probably currently crying in the locker room, because that is the correct response to your first real emergency, and she'll be excellent in 6 months. She picked up her pen. Go back to bed, he went. He stopped at the door and turned back once. Gerald, he said, is looking better. She looked at the plant. Gerald had not in fact dropped a single leaf all night. He was simply there, green and quiet, in his pot on the shelf. He has good nights and bad nights, she said. Edmund Ashworth nodded and went back to his room. Friday morning, Dr. Patel cleared him for discharge. Tessa was not on shift. She was home, sleeping, and Poppy was at school, and the apartment was quiet in the particular way that it got on winter mornings when the light came through the kitchen window at a low angle and landed on the table in a long pale stripe. She woke at noon, made toast, fed the cat that was not supposed to be her cat but had appeared at the building's back door in October and simply stayed, and she thought about the week the way she sometimes thought about particularly vivid shifts, not replaying it exactly, just holding it for a moment before setting it down. She went to get Poppy at 3:15. Poppy came out of the school doors in the way she always did, in a rush, like something propelling her forward from behind, and she was already talking before she reached Tessa, something about a science project involving volcanoes, and Tessa listened and asked questions, and they took the long way home past the harbor because Poppy liked to count the boats, and by the time they got back to the apartment, Tessa had almost entirely stopped thinking about Edmund Ashworth. Almost. The envelope arrived 10 days later through the hospital's internal mail system, addressed to the Cardiac Care Unit nursing staff, attention T. Calloway. Inside was a handwritten note, actual handwriting on good paper, and a donation receipt for Ridgewood Medical Center's Nursing Education Fund in an amount that made the charge nurse, Beverly, say, "Oh my," quietly when she happened to see it. The note said, "The spider plant is looking well. I asked at the desk before I left. Thought you should know. E. Ashworth P.S. My sister says to say thank you. I told her what I watched you do," she cried, which she would strongly deny. Tessa read it twice standing at the nurse's station. Gerald shed a leaf directly onto the envelope. "I know," she told him. 6 weeks later, Tessa Calloway was eating lunch in the hospital cafeteria, alone, which she preferred, because the cafeteria at noon was loud and lunch was the one quiet thing in a shift, when someone sat down across from her. She looked up. Edmund Ashworth was wearing a coat that cost more than her monthly rent, carrying a coffee from the cart near the entrance, and looking exactly as composed as he had looked in room 415, except that he was also very slightly uncertain. "I have a meeting with the hospital foundation board at 2, he said. I was early. She set down her fork. "Mr. Ashworth, Edmund. She studied him. "The foundation board Ridgewood has a capital campaign, new cardiac imaging equipment." He wrapped both hands around his coffee. "Ashworth Capital has been involved in healthcare infrastructure in Atlantic Canada for several years. This is not, I want to be clear, this is not a coincidence that I manufactured. The meeting was scheduled in January, before you were admitted, 3 weeks before." He looked at her steadily. "I wanted to come and tell you that in person because I thought otherwise it would seem like something it isn't." Tessa thought about this. She thought about the note on good paper and Gerald, and the long, quiet hallway at 2:30 in the morning, with her hands pressed flat against the wall, breathing deliberately. She thought about Poppy's drawing in the cover of her notebook, and the way Edmund Ashworth had called it good without making it sentimental. "Ashworth Capital," she said. "Yes, you were in Halifax for meetings. Board meetings, yes." She picked up her fork again. "Dr. Patel didn't tell you who I was." "Dr. Patel told me nothing. Patient confidentiality works both ways." The corner of his mouth moved. "I asked Beverly at the front desk. Beverly will tell anyone anything. She mentioned that as well, actually. She seemed proud of it." Tessa looked at her lunch. She looked at the man across from her who had watched her work the worst night of a hard month, and had written her a note on good paper about a spider plant, and had shown up to a 2 o'clock meeting 3 weeks early, and sat down across from her in a cafeteria, with the specific uncertainty of someone who was not often uncertain. "I get off shift at 7, she said. "On Tuesdays and Thursdays." A pause. "Thursday," he said. "There's a place on Barrington Street," she said. "Nadia's. They have good soup." "Soup," he said very carefully, like he was writing it down somewhere. "It's February in Halifax," she told him. "Everything is soup." He laughed. It was the same as the smile, the kind of thing that changed a face, sudden and real and slightly surprised, like it had arrived before he decided to allow it. "Thursday," he said again. 7:30. She nodded and went back to her lunch. She did not tell Poppy immediately. She told her mother first, on Sunday on the phone, while Poppy was in the bath and the cat was sitting on the kitchen counter looking at her with the expression cats wear when they know something is about to be interesting. Her mother said, "A cardiac patient." "He wasn't, he's fine. He's completely fine." It was a vasovagal episode and he came back. He had a board meeting. "Tessa, Mom." A pause. Then her mother said, "What is he like?" Tessa thought about it. She thought about the television remote and the bedside table organized by size and the way he'd said I didn't understand what it actually looks like from the inside. Not as a compliment, not as flattery, but as a simple statement of something he had discovered was true. "Precise," she said. "Careful. He listens more than he talks. That's rare," her mother said. "I know." Another pause. "And the little girl?" "I haven't. It's soup, Mom. It's one dinner." "Tessa." The little girl. She looked through the bathroom door, where Poppy was singing something to herself, some made-up song about submarines that she'd been singing for 3 days. 7 years old, swimming lessons on Saturdays, her father's focus and Tessa's stubbornness, drawing pictures of girls swimming and pressing them into her mother's hands like documents of great importance. She'd probably talk about submarines the whole time, Tessa said. "And Gerald? Who's Gerald?" "A plant." Her mother said nothing for a moment, then, "Tell me again why this man came back." Tessa looked at the cat looked back. "I think," she said slowly, "that he wanted to know how the story ended." Thursday came. Tessa was 20 minutes early to Nadia's, which she told herself was about the parking, and she sat at a table near the window and watched the snow come down on Barrington Street. Small and steady, the kind of February snow that was more atmosphere than weather. Edmund Ashworth arrived at 7:29. He sat down across from her and looked at the menu and then looked up. "Tell me about the submarines," he said. She stared at him. "What?" "Beverly," he said, "mentioned that your daughter had recently become very interested in submarines. She mentioned it for approximately 8 minutes. I thought it might be useful context." Tessa put her face in her hands for one moment. "Beverly," she said. "She is a remarkable woman." She looked up. Edmund Ashworth was watching her with that expression. Careful, attentive, slightly warm in a way that he seemed to be rationing, like he wasn't yet sure how much to let out. "Her name is Poppy," Tessa said. "She's 7. She swims competitively for her age group, and last month she decided submarines were the most important invention in human history and has been making her case consistently ever since." She paused. "She's not wrong, actually. The engineering is extraordinary." "It is," he agreed. "The pressure hull alone." "Do not start," she said. "I will not survive 2 of you." He smiled. "Not the small, careful one, the real one, the one that arrived before he could decide." The soup was good, the conversation was better. Outside, the snow kept falling on Barrington Street, small and steady, and somewhere across the city, a 7-year-old was asleep dreaming about submarines, and a spider plant named Gerald stood on a shelf in the cardiac care unit, dropping leaves into no one's coffee, patient and quiet, waiting for the next shift to begin. Tessa Calloway drove home at 10 o'clock with the heater on and the radio low, and she thought, well, just that, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything.